Saraswati left Allahabad for Calcutta. Abhay keenly felt the responsibility of working on behalf of his spiritual master. At the initiation, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta had instructed Abhay to study Rupa Goswami's Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, which outlined the loving exchanges between Krishna and his devotees and explained how a devotee can advance in spiritual life. Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu was a law book for devotional service, and Abhay would study it carefully. He was glad to increase his visits to Allahabad Center and to bring new people. Even at his first meeting with the spiritual master, he had received the instruction to preach the mission of Lord Chaitanya, and now he began steadily and carefully considering how to do so. Preaching was a responsibility at least as binding as that of home and business. Even in his home, he wanted to engage as far as possible in preaching. He discussed with his wife about his plans for inviting people into their home, offering them prasadam, and holding discussions about Krishna. She didn't share his enthusiasm. Srila Prabhupada. My wife was a devotee of Krishna, but she had some other idea. Her idea was just to worship the deity at home and live peacefully. My idea was preaching. It was not possible for Abhay to travel with the spiritual master or even to see him often. His pharmaceutical business kept him busy and he traveled frequently. Whenever possible, however, he tried to time a business trip to Calcutta when his spiritual master was also there. Thus, over the next 4 years, he managed to see his spiritual master perhaps a dozen times. When Abhay visited Calcutta, the assistant librarian at the Gaudiya Mutt, Nityananda Brahmachari, would meet him at Howrah train station with a two-horse carriage belonging to the mutt. Nityananda saw Abhay as an unusually humble and tolerant person. As they rode together to the mutt, Abhay would inquire eagerly into the latest activities of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, his traveling, his publishing, how many centers were currently open, how his disciples were doing. They wouldn't talk much about Abhay's business. Abhay would stay at the Gaudiya Mutt, usually for about 5 days. Sometimes he would visit one of his sisters who lived in Calcutta, but his main reason for coming was Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, and Abhay would take advantage of every opportunity to hear him. Abhay didn't try to become a leader in the inner management of the Gaudiya Mutt. His spiritual master had initiated 18 sannyasis who carried out most of the preaching and leadership of the mission. Abhay was always the householder, occupied with his own business and family, never living with the mutt except for brief visits. And yet he began to develop a close relationship with his spiritual master. Sometimes Abhay would go to see him in the Chaitanya Mutt, at the birthplace of Lord Chaitanya in Mayapur. One day at the Chaitanya Mutt, Abhay was in the courtyard where a large poisonous snake crawled in front of him. Abhay called out for his godbrothers, but when they came, everyone simply stood looking, uncertain what to do. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta came out on the veranda of the second floor, glanced down, saw the snake, and immediately ordered, "Kill it." A boy then took a large stick and killed the snake. Srila Prabhupada. So I thought, how is it that Guru Maharaj ordered the snake to be killed? I was a little surprised, but later on I saw this verse and then I was very glad. Modeta sadurapi vrishika sarpahatya. Even saintly persons take pleasure in the killing of a scorpion or a snake. It had remained a doubt how Guru Maharaj ordered the snake to be killed, but when I read this verse, I was very much pleased that this creature or creatures like the snake should not be shown any mercy. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta was reputed to be so austere and so strong in argument against other philosophies that even his own disciples were cautious in approaching him if he were sitting alone or if they had no specific business with him. Yet, even though Abhay's contact with him was quite limited, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta would always treat him kindly. Srila Prabhupada, whenever I met my Guru Maharaj, he would always treat me very affectionately. Sometimes my God brothers would criticize because I would talk a little freely with him. And they would quote this English saying, "Fools rush in where angels fear to tread." But I would think, fool? Well, maybe that is the way I am. My Guru Maharaj was always very, very affectionate to me. When I offered obeisances, he used to return, Dasosmi, I am your servant. Sometimes, as Srila Bhaktisiddhanta packed back and forth, paced back and forth, chanting the Hare Krishna mantra aloud while fingering his beads, Abhay would enter the room and also chant, walking alongside his spiritual master. Once, when Abhay entered Srila Bhaktisiddhanta's room, his spiritual master was sitting on a couch, and Abhay took his seat beside him on an equal level. But then he noticed that all the other disciples in the room were sitting in a lower level at their spiritual master's feet. Abhay kept his seat, and Srila Bhaktisiddhanta said nothing of it. But Abhay never again sat on an equal level with his spiritual master. Once in a room with many disciples, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati was speaking and Abhay listening when an old man beside Abhay motioned to him. As Abhay leaned over to hear what the man wanted, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta suddenly spoke out in annoyance at the two apparently inattentive students. Babu, he first addressed the old man beside Abhay. Do you think you have purchased me with your 150 rupees per month donation? And then turning to Abhay, why don't you come up here and speak instead of me? Abhay was outwardly mortified, yet he treasured the rebuke. It was in a private meeting that Srila Bhaktisiddhanta once told Abhay of the risks he took by preaching so boldly. Srila Prabhupada, my Guru Maharaj's contribution is that he defeated the caste Goswamis. He defeated this Brahmanism. He did it the same way as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did. As Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, Kiba Vipra, Kiba Nyasi, Shudra Kene Naya, Yei Krishna Tattva Veda, Sei Guru Haya. There is no consideration whether one is a sannyasi, a brahmana, a sudra, or a grahastha. No, no. Anyone who knows the science of Krishna, he is all right. He is Goswami and he is a brahmana. But no one else taught that since Lord Chaitanya. This was my Guru Maharaj's contribution. And for this reason, he had to face so many vehement protests from these Brahmana caste Goswamis. We can end here. It is really beautiful to read about Srila Prabhupada and his interaction with his spiritual master, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami. And we can see that Maharaj really, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta really had a very much like a close connection with Srila Prabhupada already. Although Srila Prabhupada was in Grahastha ashram and he's saying that I hardly ever saw him much. Whenever he would have business trips, he would see Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, but you can see that Srila Bhaktisiddhanta always had a special pace for Prabhupada. So it's just very beautiful to see all of these interactions, and now Srila Prabhupada is watching him and also learning from his spiritual master's example. With that, we can go on to chanting.